Matt Rule kind of drummed it up perfectly when talking about the transfer portal, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. It's going to cost you $1 million in NIL funds to be able to bring in a premier pocket passer. Not everybody's going to be able to afford that price, but there's going to be a ton of teams that do need to bring in a 5-star caliber talent under center if they want to be competitive in 2024. So where did the top names of the transfer portal land? Let's go ahead and put on our prediction hats. If you are new here, welcome on into the channel. My name is Cole Thompson. I'm a radio show host based in Houston, and I talk college football daily. So if this is the type of content you enjoy, make sure you smash that subscribe button down below. Leave a comment telling me where you would like to see your favorite transfer quarterback go to in 2024. Continue to tell your friends, your family, your sister, your brother, your mortal enemies, your best of bros, your workout buddy, your entire church congregation, and the drunk dude passed out in a Waffle House parking lot about this channel. Make sure you follow me on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson. It's the exact same as my YouTube handle. That way, we can always talk college football. So the transfer portal has already started to get a little bit of steam, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. And I don't want to waste much more time because we've already seen guys go to their new schools. Tyler Shuck from Texas Tech is now strapping it up in Louisville. You have Brock Vandagriff from Georgia, now staying in the SEC East, but learning underneath Liam Cohen in Lexington as Kentucky's new starting quarterback. And last night, word got out that Blake Shapen from Baylor will actually work with Jeff Lebby down in Starkville. And we'll do videos of all these guys on a different date. But before anyone else declares where they're going, let's get our predictions in. Starting off with the top name out there, it's going to be Dillon Gabriel. Gabriel may not be the most talented quarterback in terms of what you're looking for in the NFL, but he's consistent. He's productive. He knows how to utilize his legs. He can hit the intermediate part of the field. He's a solid game manager, and he's got enough extensive reps underneath his belt that he can probably fit in any offense. A lot of people want to peg Mississippi State because of his relationship with Jeff Lebby. I think it's abundantly clear at this point he's going to a Pac-12 school or a Big Ten school. I think he lands with Oregon. Oregon is trying to be a player in 2024 after barely missing out on the college football playoff. You look at the style of game of what he plays, it mirrors a lot of what Bo Nix does. Good in the open field, not afraid to run it, has a good deep ball, incredible when it comes to the intermediate part of the field, and highly productive from a different school, whether it was at Auburn, whether it was at Oklahoma, UCF. Dillon Gabriel and Bo Nix emulate exactly what the style of offense that needs to be run underneath Dan Lanning in year 3. And if they're trying to be a competitor in the Big Ten next year, you need to have a proven commodity at quarterback. I think that you're getting a huge guy in Dillon Gabriel. Absolutely phenomenal type of name. Now, next thing, Riley Leonard, Duke. Hyper athletic, really good with the RPO system. You get him in a pro-style offense. I think more scouts will start paying attention to what this kid could be. A lot of first-round buzz was going around him in Durham this past offseason. And he started to show what he was really made of after a start when they went 4-0. And they actually went 5-1 to begin the year. And then he gets hurt, and then the season unravels, and unfortunately, they finish 7-5. He enters the transfer portal. I think he goes to a place like Notre Dame. Ultimately, they know how to get the best out of a veteran quarterback. They're trying to have a pro-style offense. There's somebody who can hit the intermediate part of the field. You watch what Sam Hartman did this past year. I think there's no doubt that everybody who watches Hartman will say, can make it in the NFL. Maybe not a first-round pick, probably not even a day 2 pick, but definitely a name who's going to garner at least some buzz leading up into draft weekend. Notre Dame's trying to be a competitor. They understand in a 12-team playoff, it's a lot easier for them to get there. Riley Leonard, 6'4", mobile quarterback, has a good arm, not afraid to sling it, not afraid to run it either. Put him down in South Bend, Indiana. They may be independent, but they're independently pushing their way toward a college football playoff berth. Kyle McCord, Ohio State. This was a weird one because, yes, in the game, he struggled. In the game, you could actually probably blame him for most of the problems that occurred. But the kid still balled out. He had over 3,700 passing yards, 24 total touchdowns through the air, only 5 interceptions on the season. He was productive. And a team that really could utilize him is probably someone that is trying to change their offense for the better without actually reaching too far for the stars. So I'm going to go with Miami on this pick. I think Miami right now understands that they are in the window to be successful in 2024. Anybody who's watched these videos understands I believe Miami is next season's Texas. This is the year where they go into the transfer portal and they add in those final piece de resistance to elevate their status of being a 7-5 roster to more so a 10-2 or maybe even 11-1. And don't think for 1 second that you can't get the right amount of talent down in Coral Gables, especially with the NIL fund, how the way you watch Mario Cristobal recruit offensive and defensive linemen. There was a reason he was successful in Eugene. It was because of his development in the trenches. You get him quality protection up front. You allow him to build a relationship with these wide receivers. Kyle McCord may actually be the reason why we're talking about the Hurricanes in a more prominent light, not just getting a win over an SEC school that's middle tier. No, we're talking about them competing in Charlotte, competing for a national title, and maybe the start of a new promising future for a program that really hasn't been back since, you could argue, Larry Coker, but maybe even before that if you want to go deep into detail. Next up, let's talk about Will Rogers. Will Rogers is a quarterback that fits one style of offense. Go, 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 air, throw it. That's the type of system he needs to be in to be successful. And anybody out there that's saying, well, watch the way he struggled this past year. Yeah, well, sometimes when you go to a bad system, it ends up screwing over your entire NFL charisma. So get back to the basics. Who's a team that knows how to throw the football, isn't afraid of slinging around the yard, more importantly, loves to be able to watch plays unravel downfield for big-time games? It's Washington. Washington needs a starting quarterback now that you're going to lose Michael Penix Jr. They need to elevate their status of play, especially with the quarterback that is probably going to fit Ryan Grubb's system. They have young receivers that are going to be in. They're going to add names in the transfer portal. Washington just became a hotbed destination for so many different 5-stars that never imagined Seattle being their home. So imagine if you get two good young wide receivers to pair alongside with Will Rogers in a year where an offense is really going to carry weight in the Big Ten. I think it's a done deal. I think it's a perfect fit on both sides. Will Rogers gets back to a style of offense he's comfortable with. And more importantly, the Huskies, they're not a one and done. They actually are probably fighting for 10-2, 11-1 going into 2024. Another quarterback to talk about, Dayquan Finn. Many of you probably don't know this name, and that's totally understandable because if you didn't watch him action like I did. But Dayquan Finn is really, really good at what he is able to utilize with his legs. This is a kid who last season at Toledo was phenomenal with his creativity. He wasn't afraid to be a little bit mobile. He led the team, I think, in yards after contact, and he's got a decent arm. So what style of offense fits him? You try to get that with MJ Morris down in Raleigh, North Carolina. Why not do it with Finn? I think Finn ends up landing at NC State. This is a team that is trying to run more of a spread. They're not afraid to utilize the quarterback's legs. And when you get them in the open field, best of luck to you. They have some good receivers on campus. They always find a way to add in at least one or two really nice pieces, tight end, running back, slot receiver. You add that in with Finn, you're probably at least getting to 9 wins next year. Robert and I think, would be elated to have a quarterback that emulates similar skills of what you had with MJ Morris. Now you get a guy who is a little bit more proven, and maybe that's enough to go ahead and set the tone moving forward. Next up, Will Howard, Kansas State. I think this is a done deal, in my opinion. There's going to be a lot of schools that are interested in him. But if you're trying to prove to the world, I can play quarterback at the next level, you go to the Lincoln Riley Clinic. That's plain and simple. I think he lands at USC. They need a veteran to set the tone next season in the Big Ten. They need a quarterback who has massive experience. They need a quarterback that isn't afraid to get a little bit down and dirty. And they need a quarterback that can hit the intermediate part of the field with young wide receivers like Zachariah Branch. Check every single box when it comes to Will Howard. The only thing that's really missing is that repetition standpoint, because Colin Klein, very much hyperactive, mobile, a lot of RPOs, a lot of screens, a lot of pitch outs. You need to go to an offense that's going to caveat and praise your arm strength and the ability to extend plays downfield. So I like this fit for him a lot. I think he'd be a really nice addition to what the Trojans are trying to build in 2024. And he may not be exactly Caleb Williams 2.0, but maybe you just need a veteran who can actually be a game manager. And they've seen that with what you got in Will Howard. He can do a little bit of everything, and he does it at a pretty damn good level. Next up, Cam Ward, my favorite quarterback in the transfer portal. This is a guy who's a 1-year rental that will show you I can win a national title. I truly believe that if you put Cam Ward on a roster that already has proven wide receivers, a stout offensive line, and a good run game, you will have something at your disposal that is very hard to beat and very hard to replicate. What's the one thing that's missing in Columbus, Ohio? Mobility at the quarterback position. They always bring in 5-star talent at wide receiver. They always get 4 stars and 3 stars that turn into future first rounders or second round picks at running back. They always seem to have a quality tight end. Their offensive line this past year took a dip, but it's going to be a little bit more seasoned next year. And Ryan Day needs a mobile quarterback. I think that we've seen what he can do when getting his hands on someone with that dual threat mentality. And you're not going to get 1,000 yards. This isn't Jaden Daniels 2.0. But what you will get with Ward is the ability to manipulate defensive lines, allow you to extend plays outside the pocket, give your wide receivers a second chance to get open. And when in the red zone, he's not afraid to tuck it and run. This guy had 8 rushing touchdowns last year, 6 of which came from inside the 10. You add him to this roster alongside with what you're bringing back in Carnell Tate, alongside with what you're bringing back potentially on the offensive line. It doesn't seem like you're going to lose Jim Knowles defensively. So you're only building that progress going into year 3 of his tenure. You're in a really good spot if you're the Buckeyes. And yeah, it's a 1-year rental, but Aaron Nolan's waiting in the corner. This is exactly the kind of system you want him to learn from. And it's also a system that I think would benefit Ryan Day and his persona as being an overrated coach, which is asinine in itself, but that's a conversation for another day. Jordan McLeod, James Madison. This one's pretty easy for me. When there's smoke, there's fire, and there has been smoke that he would follow Kirk Cignetti wherever he went. And Kirk Cignetti now is going to be leading the Hoosiers in Bloomington, Indiana. They need a veteran quarterback because they've lost all their potential names in the backfield. Why not just make it work? You already know the system. You already know the offense. You already know what caters towards Cignetti's value. And if he doesn't go there, I think Curtis Rourke, the Ohio quarterback, is another name to monitor. We'll get to him in a second. But I do look at this team and I say to myself, if you're able to get quality play from a quarterback that already understands the offensive system, whatever it may be, it's enough to set the tone in the locker room moving forward. And that's honestly what you need in Bloomington. They have been such an abysmal team since 2020. You know, you watch as Tom Allen was never able to replicate that COVID-19 success. Get a veteran, get somebody who kind of emulates a lot like Michael Penix. Michael Penix was the last good quarterback to come through Indiana. So why don't you just get a quarterback that can do a little bit of the same type of stuff? Next up, let's talk about Curtis Rourke real fast. Rourke is a good passer. Rourke was phenomenal in the MAC this past year, and he's been that way for 4 years. Over 50 touchdowns, 5,100 passing yards, I think only 16 interceptions, a passer rating of 182.5. Kid can be a solid contributor. Now, not mobile, not a mobile dude. You are going to have him standing in the pocket nonstop. But you get him a good receiving core, and more importantly, you get him protection up front. He will deliver clean passes across the middle of the field like no one's business. And there's a team that needs a quarterback. There's a team that needs to upgrade in terms of being able to be a contender in the ACC. I like Duke. I think Duke right now with Manny Diaz, what they're trying to emulate is stout, sturdy defensive production and clean-cut quality offensive consistency. You're going to get that with Curtis Rourke. He's a dude that is not going to turn the ball over often. He's a guy that's going to get the ball into the right receiver's hands, can hit all 3 phases of the field, good touch, great accuracy. This is a trendsetter who's usually going to be someone that you want to see set the tone very early in their tenure at a brand new university. This is a way for Manny Diaz to get Durham still rocking and rolling and probably bowl eligible for 2024. Next up, DJ Uiagalelei. This is an interesting one because there's a lot of speculation that he was going to go to Oregon. I don't think that's going to happen now that you have Dylan Gabriel pretty much locked up. I thought there was a lot of speculation maybe he would go to Washington. Doesn't seem like that's going to be a fit. There was rumors that he was going to go to the ACC again. You know, get that rivalry matchup against Clemson. It's good. It's great for the sport. But ultimately, maybe you want to stay close to home, but you don't want to also hurt your chances of being a legit threat of getting hurt in your draft status. So I like a school like BYU, actually. I think BYU, they were trying to get something done with Keaton Slovis. That didn't really pan out. Kalani Sitake likes a certain style of quarterback. I think Uiagalelei fits the bill. More importantly, it still would be in the West Coast. He still would be in a Power 5 conference. And also, probably the biggest thing, he would be able to be that X factor that transcends this team from 6-6 in Tier 3 of the Big 12 to 9-3, 10-2, Tier 2 of the brand new Big 12. You're going to have the Holy War. You're going to have Arizona schools. You're going to have Utah. You're going to have Colorado. You need a veteran quarterback next year. It's a 16-team roster, program, conference. If you have that guy in the building, it does a lot of work for you, and it does carry a little bit of weight. Speaking of Big 12 schools, Grayson McCall, I think he lands in Central Florida. Very similar play style of what you have with John Reese Plumlee. You watch the way that Gus Malzahn is able to run this RPO, the triple option. He's not afraid to get his quarterbacks a little bit dirty. They like Timmy McLean. I think Timmy McLean had arguably one of the biggest plays of the year, if you go back and watch the Baylor game. But they probably want to be a team that's contending for something more than just middle tier in the Big 12. You get a guy like Grayson McCall, mobile, a little bit physical, willing to take on contact, not afraid to hit the intermediate part of the field, decent accuracy, isn't afraid to sling it when you're given the opportunity. There's talent down in Orlando. Let's get this out of the way. This is a program that could be on the come up. I'm very intrigued to see where we're going to watch a place like UCF thrive. And Gus Malzahn seems very content there. He doesn't seem like he wants another job. So if he's going to be there for the long-term future, it's all about establishing a culture, primarily at the main position. You get a quarterback like John, that's similar to John Reese Plumlee. So Grayson McCall makes a lot of sense on paper, makes a lot of sense in terms of production. Two more for you. Next up, let's talk about probably the biggest name of the transfer portal because of, we know what he is, Dante Moore. Dante Moore is a really intriguing one because you got 3 years of eligibility left with him. He didn't have exceptional production this past season when you looked at UCLA. He was on and off being benched with Ethan Garbers, but talent's there. I think a lot of people see it. I don't know if this is the best location for him, but I will say if Matt Rule is backing on his word about paying $1 million+ for an NIL quarterback that you can build your program around, that's the guy. I think Dante Moore has a shot of landing with Nebraska. I really do. I like what the Huskers are trying to implement. The defense is fundamentally sound. You watch as they were trying to nearly be bowl eligible in year one of the Matt Rule era. We know what's coming in year two. Incredible progression. Offensively, defensively, just fundamentally, they're more sound of a roster. You get a guy like Dante Moore to build your franchise and your program with for the next 2 or 3 years. This is where we see the culmination of the Matt Rule experience, where in 3 seasons, now we're talking about Big Ten championships. Now we're talking about college football aspirations. Now we have the intent of playing for a national title. And you have the coach that can do it. I have no doubt in my mind that you can't win a national title with Matt Rule. He was able to win in Waco in the most dreadful situation that has ever occurred in the state of Texas when it comes to college football, outside of maybe the death penalty. But you look at that situation and what he was able to bring to the Bears, he can do that in Lincoln. And absolutely, he can do that with a quarterback like Dante Moore. You're willing to pay the price. Moore, I think, is willing to go play in the Big Ten, primarily in a spot like Nebraska. They need a quarterback after losing out on Dylan Raiola, young up-and-comer. Why not go ahead and get a guy that you can build your program with for years to come? 2 more, my apologies. This one's really fast. Aidan, Chiles, the former Oregon State quarterback. Guys are getting penalized for transferring. You realize that, right? So here's the rule in college football. When your coach willingly leaves a program to become a head coach elsewhere, you do not get penalized for going in the transfer portal. So Aidan Chiles could transfer next season and then transfer as a graduate and never be penalized. But I think you know where this is leading. He was recruited by Jonathan Smith. He was learning a lot underneath Jonathan Smith. He was exactly the type of quarterback that Jonathan Smith wanted to run for his style of offense in Corvallis. They have nothing in East Lansing. I mean, the cupboard is bare. It is dead. There is not a single crumb left in that quarterback room in East Lansing. So you go get your quarterback. You go get your guy to build your program in your persona around for the foreseeable future. Maybe add in a veteran just for competitional purposes, but this would be the guy that you are hitching your wagon to. Aidan Chiles believed in Jonathan Smith. Jonathan Smith believed in Aidan Chiles. Match made in heaven. Done deal. Easy enough, right? Last quarterback. Let's talk about him real fast. It's a very easy one. I am interested to see what comes with a guy like AJ Swan. AJ Swan, I think, can actually be pretty productive overall. I'm not sure where he fits in terms of, the style of offense. They ran a lot of a pro style at Vanderbilt. He was a guy that probably could have benefited from maybe going to a Kentucky. He's probably a guy that could have benefited from maybe learning underneath the ropes, like, say, out of Mississippi State, Jeff Levy. I think AJ Swan stays in the SEC. I think he lands with South Carolina. They need a quarterback. They need a veteran. They need somebody with experience. This is a prove-it year, in my opinion, for Shane Beamer. He's done a lot of good with a lot less talent. He's been a quarterback coach that's been able to get the best version out of his players. More importantly, you've watched this team overexceed expectations their first 2 years. This past year kind of took a dip back. But if they get the right quarterback in the building, they get some wide receivers to replace guys like Juice Wells, Xavier Legette, You lose some talent at the running back position, like Jaheim Bell left last year. You start using the transfer portal and the NIL collective in your favor. We're talking about a team that I think can at least be 7-5 consistently, if not every once in a blue moon, 9-3. Go get yourself a quarterback that isn't afraid to sling it. Go get yourself a quarterback that has already taken hits behind a weak offensive line. I would not be shocked to see AJ Swan stay in the SEC. South Carolina right now probably feels like a front runner. But they have it. Those are the top quarterbacks that I predict going into the transfer portal. Oregon lands Dylan Gabriel. Notre Dame lands Riley Leonard. Washington lands Will Rogers. And then you have a bunch of other names out there. But make sure you like this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. As always, we'll see you next time.